I'm going to be teaching you how to draw Mickey Mouse in this class, but what's pretty cool is we're going to draw him in his Halloween costume, so extra seasonal effect. A few things before we get started. On your way in, you met my friend Thomas. Everyone say, hey, Thomas.
Hey, Thomas.
Thomas is also a Disney artist, and he's here to help us out during the class. If you need to leave at any point, take a look. Same 3 doors. These are your exit doors, and the one on the far right is the easiest to get out of. Last note is for anybody who might be new here. We don't have erasers on our pencils, and that's because we do something known as rough sketching. That basically means you want to start light and loose so you can make mistakes while you draw, and then later we'll just go back and we'll darken in all the things you like. All right? Are we ready to draw Mickey?
Yes.
All right, let's get started. We're going to start with a circle on our page. I would place this maybe about halfway up, and just very lightly keep building on that shape here. I like to keep going over that circle until I'm happy with it, so don't put that pressure on yourself to get it right on that first attempt. I'm just very lightly going to keep building on that circle here, over and over. Now, anytime that you draw a character, you want to use construction lines. That's how you get their features in the right spot. So for Mickey, I would place in a vertical line going right through the center of that circle, just splitting it in the middle. And then I would say for Mickey's eye line, this is going to go maybe about halfway up the circle. So I'm going to try to find that halfway point, and then I'm going to place in my horizontal line. When we sketch out characters, we're often using an approach called general to specific, which means that we block out the silhouette of our character, and then we add in our details later. And for Mickey's silhouette, of course, he's got those 2 big ears, very, very famous silhouette. These are going to go on the top corners of his head, and these circles for his ears are going to be about half the size of the circle you used for his face. So on the sides of his head, go ahead and place in those ears, and again, keep in mind about half the size. So right now, we're looking at Mickey's silhouette. We want to start adding in features to make it very clear that it's Mickey. I like to start with his nose, and this gets placed right underneath where those construction lines meet. Go ahead and block out a little grape or olive for yourself, right underneath where those lines are meeting. Now, Mickey is usually animated in a 2D hand-drawn style, and for characters animated in this way, they usually have little tricks in their design that help create depth and dimension within the face. And I added in this hilltop, this rainbow above his nose, and this is a perfect example. This makes it feel like Mickey's face is coming out towards you instead of feeling like a flat surface. Now, the nose and the snout line are also the first features that I'm going back and locking in. You can see that I'm doing that here. Locking in just means that you darken in what you like, but really the emphasis on that was what you like. So if maybe you made a mistake on something, like maybe the nose was too big or too small, don't lock that in. Leave it light until you make those edits, and then you lock it in. That's why we use this approach, is it's pretty forgiving. You can make a lot of mistakes while you draw, and then still end up with a great sketch. So make sure that you follow this method. Now, in addition to locking in the lines, another thing you can do to make your drawing look really complete, really finished, is to maybe add in some tone or shading. So I like to go back and just add in a bit of tone over Mickey's nose here. Now, when we draw characters, we always try to pick an expression that really feels like that character in terms of personality. So when you think of Mickey, what kind of facial expression comes to mind usually? Smile, right? Of course. Yeah, Minnie and Mickey are known for their joy, their optimism. So we're going to place in a smile for Mickey. I would say you want to place it maybe about halfway between the nose and the chin. And of course, it's going to be a large letter U shape that we stretch on each side. I like to break mine into 2 halves. You don't have to do that, but this might be a little easier. I'm just going to try to bring up each side here. Now, this letter U shape is definitely looking like a smile. He's starting to look really happy on our page, but this is not the most expressive or interesting smile we could give Mickey. Because in animation, we tend to avoid subtlety. That's something you see more in live action. Whereas animation tends to be really over the top, very exaggerated. It's called pushed expressions, pushed poses. So for Mickey, to push his expression, we're going to do 2 things. One, we're going to place in these little creases at the ends of his smile, little rainbow shapes or C curves. And then the other thing that we like to do is we give our characters an open mouth smile, which makes it feel like they're laughing or talking in our sketch. So in order to get that laughing smile, you just stretch down a letter U shape from the letter U that you already drew. And this one, I would say, maybe like past the bottom of the face is a good placement for it. Now, inside of Mickey's smile, because his mouth is open, we're going to see a few things. We're going to see his tongue first and foremost. So I'm going to place in 2 hill signs at the bottom of his mouth here. Now, I mentioned it earlier, I'm drawing Mickey in his Halloween costume. Now, if you're a purist and you're like, it must be just classic Mickey, just original Mickey, not a problem. That's where your done with the smile then, if you're going classic, just shade in the back of the mouth. But if you're drawing Halloween version, Mickey will often dress up as a vampire for Halloween. So I like drawing in some little fangs for him. And the fangs you want to draw is if you're drawing in pieces of candy corn, very round, very soft. Because in animation, there's a kind of a character design rule or principle that sharp features are typically given to only one type of character. Does anybody want to take a guess what type? A villain, exactly, yeah. So if you give Mickey really sharp fangs, he's going to look like evil Mickey Mouse, right? And unless you want that, Mickey Mouse, even dressed up to look spooky, is still Mickey Mouse. So he's going to have this like soft, round appeal to him that we get by rounding out those fangs. Now underneath his smile, let's place in a little letter U shape for his bottom lip. I'm just going to copy the same letter U of the mouth, just a little bit further down this time. Now, does anybody know how old Minnie and Mickey Mouse are currently? Okay, great guess. The company is just turning 100, so they're actually a few years younger than that. Any other guesses?
99.
Okay, you're the closest so far. They're turning 95 this November, so they're currently 94. November 18th, 1928 is when Minnie and Mickey debuted in their very first short to the public. Does anybody know what short that was? Steamboat Willie, yeah. Now, Steamboat Willie was actually not the first Mickey short, which is interesting. There were actually two prior. One was called Plain Crazy, and the other was called Gallopin' Gaucho. But the reason why Steamboat Willie is marked as the beginning is, as I mentioned, that this was the first one released to the public. So this is the first time audiences met Minnie and Mickey. And there was a reason why that short was prioritized, because if you know your film history in general, you know that in the 1920s, film started to do something really new and exciting from a technological standpoint. Does anybody know what that big advancement was? Okay, great guess with animation. They went from silent films to what's called talking pictures, right? So we got sound in our films, and animation was on a similar track. So with Steamboat Willie, it was one of the first animated shorts to have synchronized sound. So that meant there was music in the short, there were sound effects, the characters would make little sounds, right? And so that was so different and groundbreaking for 1928. Those first two Mickey shorts were silent shorts, which was considered more of like the norm at the time. So Steamboat Willie, again, really broke through that barrier, and just in that single short, Minnie, Mickey, and Walt Disney kind of solidified their status as pop culture icons. We're already about halfway done with Mickey Mouse. How are we doing so far? Okay, one person's doing good. Everyone else, still suffering out there. Okay, I got some thumbs up, got some blank stares, I got some so-sos. Okay, fair enough. How about this though? Are we having a good time? Okay, so we're all having fun. Some of us are just like not sure what to make of our drawings. Not a problem. Make sure you're caught up at this point. We want to make sure the bottom half is ready to go. We're going to move up to the top half, and I feel like maybe you'll change how you're feeling about your drawing. It's usually when we draw on the next feature that it starts to feel more like the character. Does anybody want to take a guess at the most important feature on the face is? The eyes. Yeah, the eyes are really important. The eyes are where a character comes to life. It's where their personality and their soul really reads from. And they're so important, in fact, that in animation, a synonym for drawing in the eyes of the character, it's also called waking up the character. So artists in animation really cling to this belief that it's not really them until the eyes are drawn, and that's that turning point. So for Mickey's eyes specifically, they're tall, narrow ovals, and these will peek out from behind his snout line. Because of the shape and positioning of Mickey's eyes, we usually call them surfboards in the sand. So drawing those two surfboards here, and something that I think is really fun about Minnie and Mickey's eyes when you draw them, is they've had different styles to their eyes over the years. Not a lot of characters can say they've gotten so many updates. So, for example, you could go 1920s Mickey, shade in the eyes completely. That's what he had during the 20s and the 30s. There's also a famous style called pie eyes, where you do a triangle cutout, and then you shade in the rest of Mickey's eye. That's kind of like a retro feel. But I would say in 1940, in an animated film set to classical music, Mickey debuted with this style, and I feel like since then, this has been the defining style, oval-shaped pupils. Does anybody know which film I'm talking about? 1940s classical music? Fantasia, exactly. Now, Mickey got this style in that film due to the fact that Fantasia is just classical music. We don't really get dialogue in those animated sequences. So the animators were really hoping for an update on Mickey's eyes that would allow for more storytelling, more expression, more emotion. And Walt Disney was convinced, largely because he knew Mickey Mouse was in need of an update or some kind of resurgence, because there was a different Disney character in the 1930s that had eclipsed Mickey Mouse in popularity, and Walt was not be too pleased about it. Does anybody know which character this is?
Donald Duck.
I think I heard it, yeah, Donald Duck. Donald Duck was like so popular in the 30s. I mean, he's always been popular, but that was like one of his most successful eras. He was so popular, in fact, that theater owners at the time actually pulled Walt Disney aside and they said, I know that, you love those Mickey shorts, but I think you just need to keep making Donald Duck shorts because that's what the audiences are really showing up for. And this did not please Walt Disney because he always wanted Donald Duck to be a star, but not a bigger star than Mickey Mouse. And so because of this, Mickey Mouse is put in the film Fantasia with that new look, and it's kind of a way to reintroduce him to the audience as like a more modern version of the character. Mickey was actually one of the last characters of that classic era to get this style eye. He still had those dark ovals even when like Goofy, Pluto, and Donald were rocking this more modern style. So I think that's pretty interesting, some of that backstory there. Now I've drawn in what's called a character mask. It's a framing device for the face, and the one that Mickey has like a heart shape, a curved letter M shape to it. It always starts off with like a widow's peak at the top though, which I really like that detail because when he dresses up as a vampire, it works really well. If you've ever seen like vampire movies or even just like cartoon versions of vampires, they're often designed with widow's peaks due to the fact that, it creates a more angular shape for their hair. And so it works really well on Mickey's design because he already has that built in. Now I'm going back and I'm locking in the head shape for Mickey, and I'm also going to lock in the ears. Now, before you lock in the ears, if you're choosing to add in some kind of headpiece or hat, like maybe you want to give him a top hat or combine different styles of Mickey, you want the sorcerer hat up there, just know that it always goes in front of the ears, never behind them. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, think sorcerer hat, think Minnie's bow. It's always in front of those ears. For me, since I'm going to be adding in other accessories anyway, I'm going to keep the ears more classic, and I'm just going to go over those circles that I drew at the beginning of class, keeping mine nice and dark. Now, Minnie and Mickey debuted together in Steamboat Willie, and they also debuted with the very same voice actor. Does anybody know who that was? Walt Disney, yeah. He actually didn't intend to voice these characters, but if you've ever learned stuff about Walt Disney, you probably gathered that the guy was kind of hard to please. He was a perfectionist, and so nobody was able to do that Minnie or Mickey voice the way that he was hoping. Finally, the animator stepped in and said, I think you need to do it yourself. You're the only one who's doing it the way you like it. And so he ended up taking on that challenge. But over time, he of course became too busy to continue voicing these characters. So many actors have voiced them since, but Walt Disney was the original voice. Now Mickey's first words on screen, he was selling food in a short called The Carnival Kid. And his first word was the food item he was selling. Does anybody know what that food was?
Hot dog.
Hot dog, right? I always think that's a pretty fun way to debut, right? Saying hot dog in your short. But yeah, we've completed the sketch of Mickey, so if you're going classic, this is where you're done. Now for Vampire Mickey or Halloween Mickey, I'm going to draw in a bow tie and a collar. Start by drawing what looks like a marble just underneath his chin. Then you're going to turn this into a piece of candy by drawing in like a little tortilla chip on each side. But even on something like the bow tie, we're going to want to round out those features to avoid Mickey looking possibly villainous. So I'm going to go softer with those little triangles on the sides here. Now, whenever we draw a bow on a character, whether it's a bow tie or like Minnie or Daisy's bow, we always add in something known as tension lines or fabric lines, which means that we're going to add in extra line work that makes it read more like fabric. Usually that means it's pulling from the center knot of the bow, because that's where all that pull is. So let's place in some curved lines on the sides here. And then if you want, you can also place in a set at the top. Now technically the bow tie he usually wears is a jack-o'-lantern bow tie. So I'm going to add in like a little face. And you could do like cute, you could do spooky, you could even draw like Mickey in there or Jack Skellington. It could be very meta, totally up to you. But my favorite part of his costume is I like drawing in the little collar he wears. He looks very fancy. So I'm going to add in some curved lines, and these are going to pull from just above his cheeks. These are going to start tilting down towards the bottom of my page. Once you've drawn in those curved lines, these tuck back behind the bow, creating a fan shape for the collar. So that's kind of your guide. If you can see a fan shape, then you know you're on the right track here. Once you've drawn in the collar for Mickey Mouse, though, that is your final step for drawing this character. Anything else you choose to add at this point is extra credit. So maybe you're looking at your sketch and you're like, this is just not spooky enough. I need a haunted house, or I need bats in the background. Totally up to you. You could draw in some other characters. If you have room, you can draw full body Mickey Mouse. Once you're done adding in your extra credit and your flair, though, your very last step, whenever sign your name nice and proud because you've drawn your very own